Okay, so this is how investment insight is gonna work. We're gonna have a lot of different subjects divided into 4 parts. The first part is gonna be general overview and definitions, just so you can make sure you know the baseline that's necessary to continue with, everything I'm throwing at you for the rest of the segment. The second part is going to be real world examples and how it's used practically in everyday life, so that you can kind of get a gist of how people are taking advantage of whatever topic it is. Thirdly, we're going to talk about how you can directly involve yourself in it if you have no experience or no real connections, because what's the use of knowing everything if you can't really benefit from it in real life? And then lastly, I'm going to leave open for Q&A, because you might have specific questions that I wasn't able to get into specifically on the previous 3 episodes. So I'm going to make sure that if you DM me or comment with anything that has to do with that subject, I'm going to make sure I try to, get as much done in terms of answering your questions as possible. And then we'll be able to move on to the next subject. That way you'll be able to know exactly what to do when it comes to whatever profile or investment that you're interested in, and you'll have a good gist of the market. That's the goal for Investment Insight, and let's get into it. All right, this segment, we got a hot button topic right now, and it's called real estate. So, as I explained, this episode is going to be used to define the terms that have to do with real estate so that you kind of have a baseline knowledge going forward. Some of these terms may be directly tied into real estate. Some are just general terms that may be used in other parts of the business, but you'll be able to use this and build off of these definitions in order to understand the subject as a whole. So, we're going to start with 9 terms. First and foremost, real estate. What is real estate? Real estate is defined as property that consists of land or buildings. It's pretty simple to understand. Whenever you see the term real estate, it's just referring to property. And usually it's going to include some type of land, some type of buildings, air rights, or something tangible that can be owned. Next, I'm pretty sure you've heard this word a lot. It's called a mortgage. A mortgage is just basically an agreement that states, if you pay the full amount, you get to keep the property. Otherwise, they're taking it. Essentially, the way that works is they use your house as collateral. So simply put, if you pay your bill, you get to keep what you agreed upon. But if you don't, then they get to take it back. Next, a broker. Now, this is a general definition because a broker can be used in a lot of different markets. A broker is just a person or a firm that arranges transactions between a buyer and a seller. Low key, he's just the middleman. And that's basically it. If somebody wants to buy something and somebody wants to sell something, they just play the middle ground to make sure that them two meet and everything goes smoothly. And they get paid for doing that. Next, financing or refinancing. Something that I'm pretty sure you've heard of when it comes to real estate. That's just basically using someone else's money based upon your credit and other means of eligibility in order to purchase something in specific. Somebody is fronting you their bread. Based upon your profile, they're like, you know what? Here's some money. You could pay it back. And this is how much I'm going to charge you for it. That's what financing is. And refinancing is basically the exact same thing. As you're paying the money back, you can use the money that you gave them in order to, start another finance. And then they can give you that money up front and you can pay them back over time as well. So yeah, financing is somebody just fronting you their bread so that you can buy something specifically and you have an agreement to, pay them back, which is your mortgage. You start to see how things tie into each other. Next, we're going to talk about escrow. Escrow is an agreement where a third party will accept money and pay things on your behalf. For example, as opposed to paying your taxes directly or your insurance directly, you could just pay a lump sum to a third party and then they'll pay all the little bills that's necessary. So you may have a mortgage, taxes, insurance on the house. A bank will say, you know what, just give me the total and I'll make sure everything else is situated. That's escrow. Just the housing of funds so that it can be paid out when necessary to wherever is needed. This is probably the best definition that we're going to talk about. Closing, especially when it comes to real estate. It's just closing the deal, baby. Pretty simple. You sign the paperwork, everything else is situated, and the transaction has been completed. Next, appraisal. An appraisal is when someone takes everything into account, whether it be the market price or a lot of other different factors, to give a specific price on a specific piece of property. Now, this is not limited to real estate. This has an appraisal. Your house may have an appraisal. Your car may have an appraisal. An appraisal just taking everything into account and giving a price on something. Next, a term, debt to income ratio. This is very important when it comes to applying for financing. Very easy. It may sound kind of weird, but it's very easy to understand. All you have to do is think about it like this. Once you add up all your debt and add up all your income, it's just how they relate to one another. For example, if I have $2 coming in and $1 going out, it will show that my debt to income ratio is positive. Why? Because my income outweighs my debt. If the reverse is there, however, I don't really have that much room to incur more expenses because I already don't have enough to pay the bills. The reason why this is important is because lenders, people who will end up giving you financing, want to know how much money in float you have. So that difference is called float. For example, if it was $2 coming in and $1 going out, that $1 would be float. There's another definition that I wasn't explaining. I wasn't expecting on. But anyways, that float is where a financier is gonna say, you know what? They can incur another bill and take care of it. So it's not all about how much money you have coming in, but it also matters how much money you have going out as well. Keep that in mind. Next, we're gonna talk about equity. Equity is just how much ownership you have in a specific entity, whether it be the rap label you just started out of your bedroom, whether it be the nail salon that you started with your girlfriend, or whether it be your house. How much ownership you have of that specific entity is basically called your equity. And then lastly, we're gonna talk about the interest rate. Your interest rate can be defined as how much your money costs. Now you're like, how much money costs? Think of it like this. When someone is giving you money and they're fronting you with bread and they say, listen, here go 20,000. I need 25,000 back. That $5,000 differential is how much the money costs to use. So in order to use that $20,000, you have to pay that person back $25,000. That $5,000 makes it worthwhile for the person to finance it to you, and it also makes it worthwhile to you because you're able to get that $20,000 straight up. For example, if you have $100,000 and your interest rate is 1%, that means you'll have to owe back $1,000. It's how much of the percentage total you have to pay back and how much it costs in order to take that loan. So now, you know a lot of definitions. Come back next week, and we're gonna talk a little bit about how all these definitions play into how people make money and invest using real estate today. Hopefully this was insightful. See you next week.